Today's daf yomi is Ayin Dalet Avodah Zarah daf Ayin Dalet Avodah Zarah 74. Today's daf is dedicated for Shmir for the Chayalim, Hatzal for the Shviyim, Yeshua for Am Yisrael. I'm going to start the daf on the top at the Mishnah on Ayin Dalet Amid Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Elu Asurin. These are the things that are prohibited. Va'osrin b'kolshu. Not only are they prohibited, they're going to make everything prohibited with even any amount. Osrin b'kolshu. And Rashi explains, Kol makom shenisarvu sham, wherever they get mixed up, afilu echad ve'elaf batal, even 1 in 1,000 do not prohibit. The osur neskun, and they prohibit everything. So what are these things? Yayin nesech. This is, let's say you have a barrel of yayin nesech, which got mixed up with 1,000 barrels. Rashi explains, and also you have avodas kochavim. You have idolatry. Oros Levuvin. Remember Oros Levuvin? Well, first of all, we say what's Avodas Kochavim. Rashi says this is an idol that got mixed up with 1,000 other idols, and with 1,000 other statues that are not idolatry. And then Oros Levuvin. Remember, we had the case of Oros Levuvin that's on Daf Chavtes. Rashi reminds us this is where they would stab the heart. Thank you, Bill. Yashakoach. Where they would stab the. No. So thank you. Oros Levuvin, which is the skins around the hearts, those skins which they would use in purpose of idolatry, that would also be prohibited. Vishor Anisko, and an ox that was supposed to be stoned. The Ego Arufa, we had this in yesterday's parasha. The Ego Arufa is the calf that they brought the axe to the back of the neck, or the cleaver to the back of the neck, when it was in the Nachal Eitan. And the Tzipore Mitzora. These are the birds of the Mitzora. And Mitzora requires 2 birds. One he sets free. The other one is permitted to have any benefit from. The one that's set free has to be permitted to have benefit from, because otherwise then all the birds in the world would be prohibited to us, because we wouldn't know which one is which. And we're saying here it's not nullified. V'sayir mishtalech, the goat that's sent out to Azazel. The chulin shenishchatu ba'azara. If you have chulin, which is non-sacred, which is slaughtered in the courtyard of the temple. Wait, did I skip? I skipped one. V'sayir nazir, the hair of the nazir. Petach hamor. Petach hamor is the donkey, the firstborn donkey, which was not redeemed. If it was redeemed, it's permitted. So the firstborn donkey that was not redeemed. Ubasar b'chalav, meat and milk, v'sayir mishtalech, v'chulin shenishchatu b'azara, hareo asurin, osir mekosher. These are prohibited. They're prohibited any amount. But let's just refer to basar b'chalav, meat and milk. It's a very, very important Rashi here, which changed the whole trajectory of the kitchens of the Jewish kitchen for the past 1,000 years. Rashi says, what does it mean when it says meat and milk is prohibited in any amount? This refers to chatichas basar. This refers to not a drop of milk that falls into a pot of meat, but if you have a piece of meat, shenisbashal b'chalav, this piece of meat was cooked with milk. V'nez rabbeinu tam. The milk went into that meat and prohibited the meat because there was not 60 times the meat to the milk. So you have a mamish pot of milk and you cook meat in it. That meat became itself an entire piece of meat that was prohibited. It's called chaticha nasan avela. The whole piece of meat became prohibited. If that piece of meat, which is now containing this prohibited item of meat and milk, if that got mixed in with 1,000 other pieces, they're all going to be prohibited to have benefit. And this Tana is of the position, Basar b'chalav isur hana. And this Tana is of the position that meat and milk is prohibited to have benefit. The pulti b'chol basar, because this is a dispute, Rashi says, in Parakol basar in Tractate Chol. The yesh shall lemeidim mi mishnasenu. And Rashi says there were some who tried to learn from our Mishnah, the basar b'chalav b'mashu, that any meat and milk is prohibited in any amount. This meaning even if you have a drop of milk that goes into a pot of meat. Visvura in the high bakolshu, the katani, And they think when it says in our Mishnah, any amount could go in tipas chalav shenaflu k'teira, a drop of milk that falls into a pot of meat, or chatichas basar katana shenaflu k'teira, or a piece of small meat that falls into a pot of milk. Even if there's no flavor imparted to that meat, it's still prohibited. You might have thought that. But Tolis will be Adam. He says this is a mistake. The Tana Davar Shabbat Katani. That first of all, it's explained in our Gemara that our Tana is only referring to those things which can be counted, which is called the Davar Shabbat Katani. Only those things are counted. You go on Chaticha b'Chatichos, one piece in other Chatichos. Mishum de Darko and Manos Chashav Batal. Since these are things which are typically counted, it's going to be considered Chashiv. It's important and cannot be nullified. If it's referring to this piece of meat which has milk mixed in with it, or if it's referring to a drop of milk which fell into a pot of meat, those things are not things that can be counted. The milk that falls into the meat pot is not something that can be counted, or the meat that drops into the milk is not something that can be counted. And also we have established this principle. We started on page 73b. Rashi's proving it. Everything that's prohibited from the Torah and it's not min b'mino is by taste. Even according to Rabbi Rav and Shmuel, who says any amount, if it's not b'mino, they would admit it's b'nosin tam. This is what we learn in Chulin. Rashi has to write at such length because he's reversing the regnant position. The word regnant, by the way, it comes from the word, I'm just telling you what it means. It comes from the word rex or regus, like a king. Like a king is rex. The word king is rex. So regnant means the ruling position. So the ruling position of that time was meat and milk is not nullified. And Rashi says, no, it's nullified 1/60th. The Sephardic position, it's nullified 1/60th. It was just Ashkenaz's position was that was not nullified. So the Gemara says, Tana, my kochashev. He says, what is the Tana? Why does the Tana have this list? What's the Tana's list? If he's counting anything that's distinguished, even a piece of non-kosher meat that got mixed in with kosher meat is never nullified because it's an important piece. And if he's only counting those things that are prohibited to have benefit, unless they not chametz for Pesach, it should also count chametz on Pesach. That's something that's prohibited to have benefit, and you can't have any, and it's never nullified. The Gemara says, "Amar B'chia bar Abba, b'teimer Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, Hai Tana Tarti Islay." So the author of our Mishnah says, in order to go on my list, you need two things: davar shebem minyan, v'yisurei hana. It needs to be something that's davar shebem minyan. It needs to be something that can be counted, like it's counted and it's distinguished, and also has to be something that's prohibited to have benefit. And then it will be listed in this list. Why don't you count these fruits of perach and the pomegranate of badan, these nuts of perach and the pomegranate of badan, davar shebem minyan? These are things that are distinguished, and if they are from Arla or Quality Kerem and they get mixed up, then they all have to be burnt. You can't have any benefit from them. So the Gemara says, well, actually, Hatanu awesome. That's already counted over there in the Mishnayos. But it says in the Mishnah in Arla, it's listed there, so it doesn't need to list it here. Okay, so we're not going to count like a little crumb of bread on Chametz Pesach because that's not Davar Shebem Minyan. It's not something that can be counted. But what about if you have like a bake challah for then it's going to be even though that's a specific thing. You know how many challahs you make? You know, I made 6 challahs for Shabbos, and then one of them got mixed up with the matzahs. That is something that can be counted. Why does it list that? So the Gemara says, no, man, Shamaslay the Amr Man Shamaslay, the Amrway, who is the one who says that Chametz for Pesach is Asr Ba'ana? That's Rabbi Akiva. That's the position of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is the one who says Chametz is prohibited to have benefit. So indeed, the Tana counts over there. The Tana does indeed count over there. In Mesechas Orah, Rabbi Akiva most of Afki Kor Shabbat Rabbi Akiva does even add these loaves of a person, these loaves of bread. What do you mean? Everybody says Chametz and Pesach is prohibited to have benefit. So that's why Rabbi Yonas and Abishah says no. When it says here Chametz and Pesach, it doesn't mean Chametz on Pesach. It means Chametz on Erev Pesach, after the 6th hour of the day, whereas the dispute, not everybody says it's prohibited to have benefit. Rabbi Akiva says it's prohibited to have benefit. All of these things are asur and they're prohibited, and they're prohibited at any amount. What's coming to exclude? It's coming to exclude something that is counted, but it's not prohibited to have benefit. Or something that is prohibited to have benefit, but it's not counted, like we just explained. Says the next Mishnah, let's say there was Yayin Nesech that fell into a pit. The whole pit is prohibited to have benefit. He says, no, you could still sell. You could still sell the whole pit, the whole vat, but you have to deduct the price of the prohibited wine from it. So if you have so we'll see what this means. So Rav says, well, the law is like Rav Shimon Gamliel, but that's only if you have 1,000. You have 1 barrel of Yain Nesach mixed in with 1,000 barrels of kosher wine. So you could sell the barrels, but only take the money for $999. That way, you're not taking the money of that 1,000 barrel of a low Yain b'Yain, but not if it was the liquid itself mixed in. And Amar Shmuel Amar Afil Yain b'Yain. Shmuel disagrees with Rav. He says, no, you can even do this deal even if it's just a liquid. Even the wine and the wine. So it says Rav Nachman, Halacha Ma'isa, say Halacha Ma'isa, practical action, Yayin Nesach, Yayin b'Yayin, Aser, Chavetz b'Chavetz Mutar. That if it was Yayin Nesach, then if it was liquid wine, got mixed in with other liquid wine, you can't sell it at all. But if it was a barrel, then we paskin like Rav. But Stam Yain, but if it's just the wine of an idolater and we don't know that he actually did a Nisuch on it, I feel Yayin b'Yayin Mutar. Even you could even do this. You could even sell the wine with the exception of the value of that wine. And Rashi writes here at the bottom, Rashi throughout this Masechta more than any other Masechta, right? And this is the halacha. This is the halacha. He's paskening. So that would be permitted. Okay. So now we say the next Mishnah. Now we're going to get into the last 2 Mishnayos of the daf. The last 2 dafim are all talking about how to kasher things. Also, again, it's going to be very halacha and nice, practical speaking. Really, tomorrow's daf is the source of how we kasher everything, but we get started in today's daf. God shall Evan. So let's say you have a vat. It's made out of stone. Shezifta ovikochavim. So the idolaters put their pitch on the vat, and what they would do is they would put a little bit of the wine into the pitch so that it wouldn't taste bad, so it wouldn't taste like the pitch. So minag vavitor, you just have to dry it off, and then it would be okay. What? Because they want to probably make it seal it. They probably want to seal it. It's a vat. They don't want anything to drip through. The shalates, if it would be made out of wood, Rabbi Omer Yinage. Rabbi says that also there, even though it requires more pitch on it, you still just have to dry it. But Racham say no, you have to peel it off. It's not enough to just dry it, you have to chisel away the outer layer. V'shalcheres, and if it was to be a clay vat, even though you peeled it, arezu asura. The clay is more absorbed, so therefore, even though you peeled it, it's still prohibited. Amarava dafka zifta. So Rava says, when do we say that it's okay to? When do we say that this is okay to just dry it off? That's if it's pitch. Well, but if you actually crushed the grapes there after the pitch was applied, so the first way to read it is a valdarachba, but if you crushed it without the pitch being applied, then you wouldn't even need to do with drying it off. You just need to rinse it off. So Gemara says pshita. That's obvious. Zafta tanan. It says if the pitch was applied, you need to dry it. Without the pitch, you don't. Gemara says no. Ma'odatim. You might have thought who adina filu darachba. You might have thought that you also need to dry it off, even if you just crush the grapes in it. Behind the katani zafta, and the reason why it says if in the case of applying the pitch is orcha de milsa katani. It's just speaking in the way things really typically happen. That you apply the pitch to a vat. Kamashmo, that no, you only have to dry it when there's the pitch. But if there is no pitch, you just crush it. You don't have to dry it. But now there's the opposite approach. The alternative version. Amarava dafka zavta. When can you dry it off? Only when there was the pitch of a darachba. But if you had already crushed the grapes after the pitch was applied, well, sagila binigov. It's not sufficient with drying it off, because there we say that the grapes probably got into the crevices and the wine is in the crevices, not enough to just dry it off. So the Gemara says, Pshita, Zafta Tanam. Well, obviously it says Zafta. No, Mao the Tema who I didn't, I feel darachba. You might have said, no, it's the same law, even if you crushed it. Right? The Katani Zifta. And the reason why I mentioned Zifta is Orcha de Milsa Katani. Kamash Malan, no, we don't say Dafka Zifta. Well, darachba was sagima. But if you crush it, it's not sufficient. Benigo. And the Gemara gives us an example. There was once a person who came in front of Rabbi Chia. He says, send me a guy to kasher my wine vat. There was no Chabad back then. And I had to go to Rabbi Chia and say, I need somebody to come and kasher my vat. Well, Rav, so Rabbi Chia said to his nephew, Rav was his nephew on both sides, because his Rabbi Chia's half brother married his half sister. They weren't related, but their half brother married the half sister. We saw this at least 3 places in the Shas. So it says to his nephew, remember they said, Ibu Mace, and we said, did you ask about my father? He said, they asked about your mother. So that's how you know that they're both dead. He said Shiva. So he said, so he said to Rav Zilbade, he said, go with him. Go make sure that they're not screaming about me in the base measures, meaning do it properly, to make sure that you don't mess up and then there'll be a big tumult against me. Although he saw that the vat was very smooth, that there was no crevices, so he said, should be able to just dry it. Amar Hai Vada Benigov Sagila. So Rav said at first he thought certainly sufficient to just dry it off. But as he's walking along the vat, so the cracks underneath. So in this cracks were wine. Amar Halo Sagila Benigov El Bakilov. He said, no, obviously drying it off is not going to be sufficient here. You need to actually peel it. Habibi, and this is why Rav said Habibi. He called his uncle Habibi. Rav called his uncle Habibi. He said that this was somebody very special for me, that he called him Habibi, because he was his double uncle. Because Ibo, the father of Rav, was the brother of Rabbi Chia from his father, and Rav's mother was the sister of Rabbi Chia from the mother. So he called his uncle double uncle, Habibi. He says, this is why my uncle said, be careful that they don't yell at me in the base medrash. Don Rabbanon, Hagas, V'hamechet, V'hamashpech, Shalom Kochavim. So now we're saying, how do we kasher certain things? The God is the wine press, and the Melchet this is basically like the ladle that they take the wine out from the vat to the barrel. V'hamashpech, that we already had in our daf, that's the funnel. If these are our idolaters, Rabbi Matir Benigo v'chamim osrim. Rabbi says you can Just dry these things off and that's okay. And the Chum say it's not sufficient. Rabbi himself would admit that if it would be the kankan of an idolater, she'ein asur. And Rabbi would admit that if it would be the jugs of an idolater, that you cannot use just drying it off. Ma fresh benzel is that. So what's the difference between the jugs, which Rebbe says are prohibited, and the other things which Rebbe says you just have to dry it off? So the answer is the jugs, they're meant to stay there for 24 hours, so then the taste will be absorbed, whereas the other things are very quick. Vishal 8, Vishal 11, so now the Brisa says that if the utensils were made out of wood or stone, then you have to dry them off. And if they're with a pitch, you have to peel it back. Mara says that doesn't that contradict our Mishnah? Our Mishnah says that if it's made out of pitch, if there's a pitch lining, you just dry it off. Whereas the Brisa says you have to peel it. So the Mara says our Mishnah is talking about a case where you didn't yet press it into the wine vat, and so therefore drying it sufficient. But the Brisa is talking about a case of derech where you pressed it, and so therefore it got into the cracks, and you have to peel it. So again, we repeat this statement that if it was the vat, the wine, the ladle, and the funnel, Rebbe says you just dry it, and the Chum says it's prohibited. But didn't we say that if it's a pottery utensil, it's clay, even though you peeled off the pitch, it's prohibited. And so that's not like Rebbe, who says that all these utensils that are made out, all these utensils are made out of pottery, they're going to be permitted just by drying them off. Amarava seifa de masnisin also rabbanan. So we have to say that the concluding clause, which says that that you just dry it off, that it's prohibited, you can't just dry it off, that clause follows the rabbanan. And Darash Rava given another condition, Nava Artacho. He says that, what did Rava say when he taught this? He said that you have to boil up the wine press that you purchase from a guy. Meaning to say, if you buy the wine press made out of wood or stone, and you press and you put the pitch on it, and then you press the wine on it, that earlier said that you need to peel it. He says if you want to use it immediately, you could immerse it in boiling water. It's the question, does it mean pour boiling water on it or boil it up to the top with boiling water? Any event, he said you have to do boiling water. Yeah. Why not? Well, you have to see on the type of wood it is. It depends on the circumstances. If it's like a lot of the wood you buy today in the stores are very smooth and it's okay. They used to make utensils very different than our utensils. Our utensils are like processed utensils. There's nothing, they're not porous. They're not like these, imagine like a caveman's utensils. They're like very different. So
wood utensils are much porous than stoneware.
Even the wood, like you buy it, they steal it. Anyway, you'll see when we come to, anyway, you could also say the way it's absorbed is the way it's removed. That's what we're going to get to in tomorrow's daf. But first, we'll see the following case. Rava Kavim Mishader Gulfei Arpanya. Rava, when he was sending with a guy empty jugs to a place called Arpanya, Sachafuhu Apumayuk. He used to what did he do? He used to overturn the jugs on their mouth. The chasamu abertzayo, and he would seal them on the back of them, on there. So basically, he would make two seals. He would turn them over and seal them in that way, so it would be a double seal to make sure they didn't put their own wine in them. Because he was of the position that was anything that was typically meant to last, even for that moment, the rabbis made a decree about it. Okay, so we'll stop here because tomorrow's daf is going to discuss how you dry it. So I'm not sure when I'll be able to do tomorrow's daf.